Just completed the Master Learning Skills course in the Chaminade University MBA program here in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was taught by Brian Weller. Amazing guy, amazing class. I learned fantastic things that my brain could do that I had no idea was even possible. Brian agreed to spend a few minutes with me after the program here today to have a conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you, so take a look. There was such an amazing course. Really just learning what the brain is capable of and having an opportunity to explore those capacities, and even in such a short amount of time. I mean, I really appreciate what you were bringing to that experience. And what was amazing to me is how universal among the students the impact was, right? Like everybody's remarking about, wow, what a fantastic expansion of my capabilities in just a handful of hours. I mean, really. It's brilliant. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Yeah. So you know what I wanted to ask you, because these skills are so powerful and the capacities so great, especially in an environment dedicated to learning, why aren't we learning these things sooner?
That's a great question, Cole. And it's a question I've had in my mind for many, many years. When I started this work with my small team in the United Kingdom, our first base was to go to education, high school, junior school, things like that, and the impacts were amazing, because what we discovered, and it's still the case even after many years, that children are not taught how to learn. And that's not to say there are not theories about how to learn, or learning theory, learning methods, etc. What has been missing is basing our skills and competencies for learning on hard neuroscientific research. So what I've been doing over the years is blending, looking at sort of basic research into cognition, memory, how we perceive, how we think, how the brain actually stores information, and that's been relatively recently understood. And also the pedigree of research does go back over 100 years, with people like Hermann Ebbinghaus in Germany and others. So, to answer your question, education is a vast institution, and like many institutions, it has inertias, and teachers tend to teach how they've been taught. So there is a kind of generational lag. So it's a bit like, the seventh wave principle, where there are a number of waves hitting the shore. It's the seventh wave which really moves the sand up the beach. So in a way, I believe we're in a seventh wave time right now.
Great.
And so the research from brain science and cognition, there's enough of it in now so that we can extract the principles and then apply those directly to education, and most importantly, learning. In a nutshell, I believe that the future requires us to get out of academic excellence to get us into learning excellence.
Sure. So a question for you, I mean, you can only reach so many people. I'm hoping even this video reaches a lot more people than ordinarily you in person can reach. For students across the world, around the world, if you want to point them towards research, towards methodologies, towards information that will help them get even a little bit of this is amazing, this is going to change the way that I learn going forward in my entire life. And that's what everybody says when they come out of your course. Can you help us, just the regular Joes out there who maybe they don't have access to Chaminade, they don't have access to the other universities that you teach at? Where do I look? How do I gain these capacities in my own life?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Clearly, with social media and with the internet, we can publish programs, for example, on YouTube, and there are a number of institutes that do that. There's distance learning, online learning. Many of these technologies, or channels, you could say, are more and more open. And our intent is to work some of those channels for this kind of work. However, begs a big question.
Yeah.
As the future unfolds, what will be the balance between in class, face to face, working with an expert or subject matter expert with students or business also? What's the balance between that face to face experience, which is super sensory,
Right.
direct,
Great.
real,
Yeah.
and the distance learning that occurs through online programs, etc.
Sure.
I believe the future, the unfolding future, we've got to get that balance right. I believe there is a place for, it's like coaching. It's a bit like an athlete, for example. How much could an athlete get by watching an online video or even a class and then attempting to translate that
Sure.
into an on-track
Yeah.
routine or experience? We can get something from that. But there's nothing like having an actual coach
True.
saying, hey, you know what? Because the human mind is extraordinary. And one of its great features is being able to sense what is going on with the other on many levels at the same time.
Yeah.
Not just what is said or what is seen or even what is felt, but something much deeper than that.
Yes.
And I think this is like wisdom training.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we call this course a master course in learning skills.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm looking to do over the next few years is to multiply myself. So I've trained some of the faculty here at this university. I'll be training more. And then ultimately, my vision is that as students, or as young people certainly, grow up with the kind of skill sets I'm teaching,
Yes.
which is really advanced cognition, advanced learning, that they will be able to mentor each other.
Sure. Great.
It becomes part of the fabric of our life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So you mentioned social channels. You mentioned YouTube. These are growing spaces of learning and growing spaces of access to knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't know how to repair a dryer, but I had a dryer that broke in my house. I pulled up YouTube and
There it is.
I'm able to do that, right? Which, is really an extraordinary experience, right? So while people are becoming so familiar with this immediacy of access to information, the brick and mortar institutions have a sort of a necessity or even an urgency around retooling or reshaping what they offer and how they offer it. Do you have thoughts or suggestions for classic brick and mortar institutions, universities, colleges, on how they should be avoiding what some are calling like a Tower Records moment, a blockbuster moment?
Yeah.
How can they retool to stay in relevancy and to work in Congress with the other emerging channels?
This is a really important question, Cole. It starts with, I think, with the university, not just like this one, but many of our brick and mortar universities. It requires us to really look at our value proposition. What is the value added for students to come to a brick and mortar and just have real face time with a professional? Given that so much of the let's say the knowledge, subject matter knowledge, is more and more available through these media channels. Given that, the question is, what then is the role of the university and the role of the professional? A professor is someone who professes. It's like they have authority because they've authored their work.
Sure.
And so the real question, I think, or the real answer here, our way of looking at the answer, is to look beyond knowledge.
Okay.
Right? And obviously there are many levels of knowledge. Beyond data, information, knowledge, there is wisdom.
All right. Sure.
Right. So how do we educate our oncoming generations to make wisdom-based choices? And that's up for us as a society. The choices we're making in terms of where we put our tax dollars, where we put our time and effort, where we innovate, what are the choices we're making? Are we making those choices based on wisdom? Students basically know that no one knows what the work or the quote jobs will be in even 3 or 4 years' time.
Sure. Totally.
Everything's changing so fast.
Yeah.
We've got this exponential age with a lot of disruption occurring through technology and other things. But the real question is, how do we make wise choices? And beyond wisdom, there is the distinction of mastery. And I believe that mastery is basically taking the collective wisdom of humanity, topic, subject by subject, or generation by generation. It's that deep intergenerational knowledge, if you will, and fashioning that to inform the kinds of choices we're making as a society, and most importantly, what the future of employment will be. And maybe even employment itself, that very distinction, is open for change.
Yes.
I believe the distinction management is open for change.
Yeah.
In the past, management was necessary to build in levels of control in a top-down kind of way. And we've rewarded that, and we've built up these amazing pyramidal organizations. And we now know more and more that's not how nature organizes itself when it's working, for survival purposes or procreation, etc. We've got to start modeling business, and we've got to start modeling work in a much more nature-centered way.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying? It's called biomimicry.
Yes. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, I think we should be looking, beyond just not the acquisition of knowledge, which is changing considerably day to day, but the real awakening of wisdom, building into mastery, and that mastery says something about our collective intent as humanity. We have a real, I think we have a real responsibility for living on this planet right now, and I don't believe we are living responsibly.
I understand. Let's say it back to you, see if I've got this right. For brick and mortar, it really sounds like what you're suggesting is to foster opportunities for learners and masters to sync up. And not so much about the acquisition of knowledge, but the application of knowledge, right? So each individual has their own approach, each individual has their own passions and their own problems that they're seeking to solve. The institutions that classically were oriented around the dissemination of knowledge, right? Someone to profess and then students to take the notes, really evolving to environments where masters and apprentices, really, of any field can come together to facilitate the generation of wisdom within individuals. Do I have that right?
You do.
Okay, so the last question I have for you, given that being your suggested course for how brick and mortar can continue to not just stay relevant, but to it's more than that. It's staying relevant sounds like keeping up, but it's to really transform. There's an opportunity to transform and shift into a whole new paradigm of secondary and post-secondary education, which is like, let's do that rather than how do I not become irrelevant. It's what is the real opportunity that's emerging here? The same question can really be asked of the students, the learners, the apprentices. Can I ask you, what is your suggestion about how they can take advantage of the opportunities that are emerging in this new paradigm?
I think this is right in the center of the target here. If we just think back to the fact that, we're born naturally curious.
Sure.
I mean, that's a given in humanity. And all of nature, actually. It's a curiosity to explore. Age 2, when a human being has gone around the sun twice, right? Year 2.
Yes.
What kicks in is inquiry. Kids start asking the questions. Where, why? Who? Where? What's this? And when are we getting there? And those classic questions. It's almost like a Socratic program that kicks in from the DNA. The kids suddenly start articulating their natural curiosity. Now, what happens in education? This will come back to your question.
Sure.
Is that we tend to block that out of our children. We tend to filter that out, and this starts with how we are with our parents. Kids aren't trying to sort of be difficult with their parents by asking questions. This is what's coming out of them.
Totally.
The word education comes from the Latin educare.
Okay.
Educare means to lead out. Duke, right? Leader.
Sure.
How do we lead out? That means how do we amplify this inquisitiveness, this inquiry? So here's some concrete things. One of the things we do on my program, with this course I'm developing on master learning skills, is to teach the mastery of inquiry. For example, how does an investigative journalist get on the trail or on the scent of something that he or she feels, you know what, there's a story here? How do they find that story? How does a detective solve a crime? Right? They've got some evidence, they've got some outcome. They've now got to backcast that and come out with some kind of causality and who was, How does a master surgeon who's presented with certain symptoms, investigate? This is investigative work.
Sure.
And really the finest mastery skills we have in our culture are these kinds of examples. These methodologies, how to think critically, how to investigate, how to learn, these are the skills and competences we should be teaching our kids from the beginning because that's their nature anyway.
Sure.
Mastery, so coming back here to the role and purpose and relevance of educational institutions.
Yeah.
These should be places, almost like, Socrates used to he had a beautiful modality of learning called koinonia. Means to kind of, koinonia means the coming together of knowledge, the noia, the mind, nous. And he had 3 working principles. People would come, they'd sit in circle. Number 1, listen carefully. That means listen with nothing added. Just listen. Second, don't argue. Now, don't argue doesn't mean not inquire or question, but it means don't argue. In other words, what's behind the question, what's behind the challenge, is not to you, it's to what is occurring in the discourse. And number 3, be prepared to have any of your assumptions challenged.
Great.
Okay? So that includes things like judgments, prior knowledge. This is the basis, if you will, of Western learning. Now we have the East as well. We have a rich tradition from the East, from the Vedas of ancient India to the great work in China, Japan, and right across Asia.
Yeah.
The master-pupil relationship. So what is mastery on the level of learning? True mastery occurs when the master enables the pupil to realize that they are the master also. You cannot be a master until you've had a disciple. It's like saying, who made God the Father? Well, it was God the Son.
Yes.
Because you can't be a father until you've had a son. The relationship, I believe, between teacher and student is such that both become teachers through the imparting wisdom, mastery, competencies. So I believe that's the future. The future is going to be radically different from now. I believe there's a place for assembly, there's a place for physical relatedness, using all of modern technology to download latest knowledge, latest research. But the question then is, as you say, how do we apply that? And how do we apply it for ourselves and also for the betterment of society? This is the greatest challenge we face right now. And lastly, I would say that there is a big question mark over humanity right now. I often see the planet Earth in my dreams as the dot under the snake of the question. If you can picture that.
Yeah, I can.
The question then is, what are the true moral and ethical challenges we face? Can we recognize those with clear eyes? And can we prepare our students and young people to create a world that can work for everybody? Now that's what learning skills are. How to map the future we want, how to be able to read people, read information, and how to understand cognition. Because it's in here that the wars begin. It's in here that peace begins. And it's in here that learning begins. So we've got to teach from this. this, and I believe that's the future we can have.
Great. Brian, thank you for sharing with us.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.